as we speak. They've been going on for millions of years, maybe billions of years, and that the Nephilim were just one iteration of these beings that were killed and created demons.
Well, I talk about this.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I talk about this in my book a little bit, and I haven't got it published yet, but I'm close. And it's just about that time in God's Word. But I look at it like this, because outside of where we are, time is different, right? Time is for man. God said, "Let there be light," on that, and then there was light. God saw that there was light, and it was good. He said it was good. So God spoke. Hearing came first, and then God saw to teach us a lesson. First you hear, then you see, and then you hear again. So you hear God speak, God sees, and then God speak. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. And we're, right from the very first verses of the book of Genesis, we see that whole idea that God is trying to form in us as his creation, that you need to hear, and then you'll be able to see. Because having eyes you will not see, and having ears you will not hear, and faith comes by hearing. Jesus healed the deaf man first, right? Then he fed the multitudes, and then he healed the blind man. It came that way for a reason. Jesus didn't do anything out of order because Jesus had a reason for doing everything the way that he did it, according to God's plan. Now, I've got to shoot something at you, brother, because we're talking about something that's kind of deep here, about the principalities and the regions of the earth, the regions of the air, or the regions of the heavenlies, with the earth wobbling. And I'm going to throw this at you. If the earth wobbles, does the atmosphere above the earth wobble with it?
That would probably have to be the reason why I would submit that it does is because I believe that we live in an electromagnetic universe. I believe that gravity and Newtonian physics is a thing of the past. It doesn't exist the way that we think that it does, that it's a plasma-based universe model. It's electromagnetic. When you do the studies on things like Project Pegasus,
right.
When you do studies on things like the Montauk Project, when you understand that everywhere you look, you look at the movie Contact with Jodie Foster, which is just absolutely overflowing with all kinds of facts and figures, stuff anecdotal facts, if you will, from whistleblowers and people that have come forward over the years. Every single thing appears to be interlinked through a plasma universe model, a hyperdimensional torsion field, as it has been referred to. When you look at that physics in a different way, and you understand the electromagnetic interplay, when you look at things, people will say, well, I determined that there is a planet out there that we can't see with our telescopes or don't know where to point it, but we determined it was there mathematically because there was a certain wobble on a particular planet that we are aware of, and I did the math and everything, and they equate that to gravity. But when you look at it electromagnetically, when you understand the interplay of the sun's heliosphere across the entire, which is really a type of particle energy field, right. that it goes even beyond the outer reaches of our solar system, which is phenomenally huge. Most people don't have no idea how unbelievably huge our solar system actually is. And when you understand that just the smallest perturbances in these various fields, whether they be fields of neutrinos or whatever it is, that you're measuring, that they're all interlinked, that the behavior of the sun and the sun's sunspots and eruptions and things like that have a direct effect on the magnetosphere of the Earth. When you look at it from a particle physics level, and you postulate, and probably rightfully so, that all of these particles are interplaying amidst one another, then it stands to reason that since the atmosphere is made up of these particles, and these particles are charged particles, they have an electrical characteristic to them, then as the Earth would move within the realm of its magnetosphere force field, it would also carry with it the particles that are associated with the atmosphere, because they're interlocked in an electromagnetic plasma field of some type.
Right. The air, like the air in a car, when you're going down the road, the air is traveling 70 miles an hour
Very
with you.
well said. Thank you. That was brilliant.
But let me expound on this a little bit, because I've been wondering why we don't have, and I live in Florida. We haven't had hurricanes last couple of years much, but all the hurricanes popped up in the Pacific Ocean this year and not in the Atlantic. And it made me wonder, is it because of the wobble? And are these principalities really, really, really confused right now because their regions are constantly overlapping? Does this make sense what I'm saying? Because of the wobble, because the magnetosphere, like you say, we're in a vehicle. The space and everything's the space made up of the ether, and God said He separated the firmament, the water above the firmament, from the waters below the firmament. So we're looking at seas and the air actually being water. So if that's the case, we understand that air, even though it's not as heavy as water, it is like water. So there are repercussions or waves, shock waves through the air if there is a wobble in the earth, even though the atmosphere being tied, well, like with the Schumann's resonance, the negative charge and the positive charge between the earth and the ionosphere, there's always going to be a connection there, but there's going to be a perturbance too. I'm wondering if there is an overlapping of regions and it's really throwing everything out of kilter. Because the reason I come to that, there's times that my wife and I, there's certain places we don't feel comfortable going. It's almost like there is a barrier there, like there is a principality there, or there is a regional barrier that we can't see but that we can feel. But that it changes. It changes not daily, but it changes over like a week or two. That it might be extended, like the bad part of town, perhaps. Okay, sometimes the bad part of town is a little more light than it is at other times. That's kind of what I'm saying. Is there a chance? Of course, this is all conjecture. We don't know that this fluctuation, this wobble of the earth that's going on, and we have all kinds of evidence that it is. The air is it's playing catch up. The atmosphere is playing catch up with it, and as it's to and fro. Does this make sense what I'm saying?
Well, it does, and I think it's all of the above. I never discount any possible interplay between the dimensions and the physical, particle physical universe that we live in right now. For example, so the best analogy I can think of is that in this particular time space, where we're trapped in for lack of a better term, in a fallen state, if you will, and I'm not suggesting necessarily that fallen state extends, across the entire universe in this time space. I do not know, but I will. But what I would say is that probably the closest analogy I can think of is a TV channel. But you have to go back into the 1970s. You have to be old enough to remember the TV channels that had the click. You had to get up off your hiney cheeks and walk across the room and click, 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 click. And you only had about 4 stations, and a lot of times you'd be watching, I Love Lucy on Channel 4, but then all of a sudden Gomer Pyle would go, surprise, 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 and his face would show up right over the top of, Ricky, or whatever. And the point I'm making is that is probably analogously very close to what the interdimensional overlap concept is that could be a contributing catalyst to what you were just saying. Now, so what I'm saying, I don't want to take it off the table. Could it be an additional catalyst, an aggravator, an additional cause and effect element to what we're seeing today? Absolutely. But I do tend to lean before I go there because that tends to be a little bit less tangible. I tend to lean a little bit more toward the stuff that I can touch or I can research or that is that does fit the best I can understand of today's current science model. I'm not saying I have an unimpeachable understanding of things. I certainly absolutely do not. 1 Corinthians 8:2 is one of my favorite verses. If anyone thinks they know anything, they know nothing yet,
Amen.
as they ought to know. That being said, I think it's a travesty. It's heartbreaking. It's gut-wrenching. I go into travail and tears at times in prayer over people who are highly scientific. They read books like Forbidden Archaeology. They know that there's a 300,000-year-old Neanderthal skeleton at the Museum of Science and whatever down the street from their house. They've taken their kid there. They go to church. They can't explain the 300,000. They try to squish it into a 6,000-year thing. It doesn't work. There's a 50,000-year-old meteor crater in Arizona, and they're trying to go to and tell, yes, the Bible's true, and Adam and Eve were created 6,000 years ago, and all those scientists are liars, and all those, and it's just, it breaks my heart. Because if you look at it a different way, if you look at it, instead of trying to start at this infinitesimally small view of the universe and crush God into an itty-bitty little thimble that's 6,000 years old, instead of looking at it from that vantage point, try taking a different approach. Go and look at the empirical information, look at the science, although albeit somewhat flawed and in some cases even distorted by the forces of darkness. But the point I'm making is, when you look at the body of knowledge, you apply the 80-20 rule to it, you have an endless body of information that's pretty much verifiable. You've got, for example, with NASA, you've got 18,000 full-time people working at NASA right now, at my last count. You've got 30,000 full-time contractors working for them. You've got 10,000 PhD-level astrophysicists across the world. There's certain things that you would think, if they were true, that people are espousing out there, certainly somebody would come forward, and those tens of thousands of experts that are out there. We got to use a little bit of, and so when I look at the forbidden archaeology, when I look at the evidence of the Cro-Magnon men, I want to take that science, that 50,000-year-old meteor crater, the billions of stars in the universe, the quantum mechanics evidence of at least 11 measurable dimensions. I want to take it and map it back to the Holy Bible. I want to take the tangible stuff, the empirical information. I want to go on Ancient Aliens and tell all the guys on Ancient Aliens, hey guys, you got a lot of it right, but you're missing the most important part. Jesus created it all. Yeah. It's fascinating how they can believe in, for otherworldly beings. Yeah. That came to the earth. They can postulate that they were perceived as gods, or minor gods, or gods, little g gods. I would submit that's correct. They're just missing what I would love to do is get in front of George Tsoukalos, after I comb his hair back and make him look, like he's not an otherworldly being, and say to him, hey, did you ever ask yourself the question, who created these other beings? Because we as humans are unable to understand existence without origin. Right. You see what I'm saying? So if you stand in front of the world's most ingenious astrophysicist with triple PhDs from multiple universities, and you sit down and he tells you this phenomenal, awesome, well thought out, mathematically substantiated information and stuff that they believe and written books about and everything, and then you look at him and you say, okay, but who created the gases that exploded during the Big Bang? Because our brains do not have the capacity to understand existence without origin, which means that we don't exist.
Because what we have to have tangible things. We have to see an object to see this. This is how, it goes back to hearing and seeing. Because remember, right back to Genesis 1, because if you really comprehend, guys listen, if you can really comprehend what God did in Genesis 1, the whole gospel is in the first chapter of Genesis. And